What's up, everybody? How you doing? Welcome back to the Punk Rock Review Podcast, man. We're hanging out today talking about a couple of 1990 Lookout releases. Now, I think these have both been re-released, since then. I know the Queers album has, but we're going to talk about Mr. T Experience, Making Things with Light, and the Queers Grow Up. Both 1990, both California, both on Lookout Records. Yeah, man, pretty interesting stuff. I think I don't know. We just spent a few minutes catching up talking about LA and stuff because I haven't really talked to you since I've been home.
Mm-hmm.
This music that we're going to talk about today, it's kind of polarizing, yet at the same time timeless, and I think objectively well made is what I'll say. Good, I think is not the right word. I think well made. Like it like the music is written really well. It's going to be an interesting conversation, especially with what's going on in the world of punk rock and hardcore right now. Are you familiar with what's going on right now?
Vaguely, like through headlines. You know what I mean?
That's what I thought. That's what I figured. I mean, you're really busy right now, so with all this stuff going on with musicians having physical abuse, theft, just overall bad behavior, and it needs to be called out to a certain degree. But I think that there's going to be a topic we'll touch on here in a few minutes. But yeah, man, I'm interested to talk about this. I'm interested to hear people's feedback. I'd like to hear responses to my thoughts on it too, specifically, just because my thoughts are more or less, I guess not questions, but I guess here's an idea. What do y'all think? So I guess I question of sorts, but it's not really necessarily exactly how I feel about something. It's more like, hey, this is what I'm thinking. How do y'all feel about this? Because I'm interested to know if maybe I'm on the wrong track with this stuff. Because, I think that when you're talking about behavior within a culture and a group, there's a lot of things that come into play. And I think that generation gaps will tend to have people argue more so than they will come together. And I would like to try to fix that. I'm willing to change the way I think and behave if I need to. And I think a lot of people, when they get a little older, don't want to do that. They get stuck in their ways and they go, no, I'm just going to be me. If you don't like it, fuck you, which is okay within punk rock to a degree. It's kind of how we are in punk. But I still think there's always room for growth and improvement. I don't always talk and behave like this because I'm kind of just usually wanting to do some entertainment type stuff, but it is necessary. It's something we got to talk about. It's in front of us. Unfortunately, we have to address it. We can't just ignore things that are happening. I think that's super, super dangerous. But before we get to a heavy subject, let's talk about Mr. T Experience. So let's see. Yeah. Released in 1990 on Lookout Records, Mr. T Experience's third album called Making Things with Light. It's the band's first album to include Aaron Rubin on bass. Let's see. Oh, the title of the album just refers to the Light Bright cover art, I guess.
It's the band. They're like on the...
Yeah, it's like the band.
Like the little kids doing the thing, yeah.
Yeah, Light Brights are dope, actually.
Yeah, it just feels very 90s when you see that, right? Or,
oh, dude, this is so straight pulled from my childhood. I didn't know that this was the Wikipedia. Obviously, that's what I'm looking at. It says that it was compiled of several recording sessions over a 2-year period. We're going to hear about this a couple of times in this conversation because I think the Queers also took a long time to compile that album.
Yeah, and this one, what it was is they were okay. So Dr. Frank, who is the guy in Mr. T Experience, he goes back in East Bay and punk rock. He predates Gilman Street and all that. He was a radio DJ around there, and that's how Larry Livermore and everyone kind of got to know him. They did not want to be on Lookout initially for their first couple of albums, and Larry doesn't really know why. They just kind of didn't feel like Lookout was the right place. And then so they went on Rough Trades Records, which had a lot of East Bay bands, but was actually like a foreign based label. And so like Larry with Lookout, he was pretty like offended by it that like the band that literally had a song about Gilman Street on their first album wasn't on Lookout. With that said, he had remained friends with Larry, and he was even the guy who put Larry in touch with a lot of producers and stuff to get Lookout going. So they were, I think, intending to do their next album with someone. I don't know. They may have shopped it around a little bit to some bigger guys, and there was a little bit of interest, and so they were recording some stuff, but the label they were with fell apart. Like they like went out of business. So
Hey,
then
that sucks.
yeah, and then, but also in that meantime, and Lookout hadn't done much, but they had Op Ivy at that time. Green Day was on that first album. They were a lot more of a legit label than the label that was just the Lookouts. So at that point, they're in there with their third album, and so the reason why it was cobbled together is because they actually didn't know where it was going to be released, and a lot of some of that Lookout stuff would be like that, where bands and you have experience with this, bands sometimes come to you with the album. You're not necessarily recording it, with them. You're more helping them package it and distribute it and that kind of thing. And this is kind of, I would say, a little bit in that vein.
I think that that's an important distinction we need to make when talking about record labels. If you are in a band, I think it would be in your best interest to complete your music, or at least have some solid demos ready,
Mhm.
and bring that to a label, like you said, for packaging, distribution, and maybe some PR. That way you own all of your music. I want to be very clear. I think that's the most important thing about my label, is that we don't own anything. That's not what I do. So, and I say that because talking about these bands, like whenever I go back and look at the history of punk rock and look at these bands and what they did, how they did it, it always blows my mind that they wanted all these labels to pay for all this stuff. And then they're surprised later when they don't own their masters. And I'm like, well, at least back then, that's just how that was done. If they
Mhm.
paid for all of your work, like all your recording costs and everything like that, that was the perk of that, was that they got to keep the master recordings. Man, try to avoid that at all costs, dude. Keep your music, man.
The famously, right, the Beatles catalog got sold to like
Right.
Revlon or something like that. Yeah.
Dude, Michael Jackson owned I don't know how many people's catalogs, dude. Like, it's crazy, man. Keep your music if you can. I didn't want to get off on a tangent. So this whole entire episode is going to be about a very, very, very specific kind of music within
Mhm.
Ramonescore. Uh, I think we need to keep in mind that we're talking about albums from 1990. Dude, that is 35
Yeah.
years ago. 35 years ago was 1990. So just remember that when you're looking at some of the artwork and especially some of the lyrics, man. The Mr. T Experience is one of those bands that I probably had no business even knowing who they were. I
Mhm.
found out about them because I was given a tape. Now, I did some talking to my sister recently, and I think I figured out what was actually on that tape. I had kept telling people that I thought it was Mr. T Experience, Less Than Jake, Op Ivy, and Crimshrine.
Mhm.
That wasn't who was on it. Actually, they were kind of on it, but it was in a lot less chunks. I thought there was only 4 bands on the whole tape. No, that was like one side of the tape. But on the other
Mhm.
side of it, it was the Queer Screeching Weasel. Um, oh my goodness, dude, what was the other 2 bands? I'm forgetting now. Anyways, it was a whole bunch of bands, but that's how I heard about Mr. T Experience. There was probably 5 songs by this band on this tape that I got way back when I was very first getting into this music. So I
Mhm.
heard about this band a long time ago, and I liked them right off the bat. Now, I remember liking them immediately upon hearing them, but I was like 13, 14
Mhm.
years old when I heard this band. And I want to make a point to say that what I wrote down here in regards to this is that I used to love this band immediately upon first listen. I liked it. This time around, it took a couple of listens to get back into it. I can see how, if only given one listen, someone may not like this. But you got to let it cook, man. It gets way better with the more spins you give it. With the more time you spend with this record, this band specifically, the vocal styling, all that stuff starts to become, oh, I get it now. It's not something that you can listen to upon one, or you can, but I can understand why you wouldn't necessarily care for it upon the first listen. I just think that I've grown a lot as a music listener in the past 3 years,
Mhm.
and I've gone back and given a lot of stuff second, third, and fourth chances that I never thought I would do. And it's really opened my eyes to the fact that, man, I guess you do have to give songs more than one listen. I used to be of the mind that if I heard something and I didn't like it, I just moved on.
Mhm.
And it just was like, it is what it is. I don't have time for this, man. I got there's plenty of stuff to listen to. I don't know that that's the wise way to go about this anymore, man.
I agree. That's why I did it for a very short time. I hated like the whole idea of reaction content, because it's just that's not. Yeah, it's cool to see that. Like I get the appeal of like experiencing a song with someone for the first
Right.
time, but it's not really good analysis. It's not really good a good like album review or good. It's just I don't think it's meant to be done like that. And I think you say that about Mr. T Experience, but I think that applies to Ramonescore as a whole, because it almost seems like a parody genre when you first listen to it. Every time you give it a first listen, like
Yeah.
I have always had the thing a little bit with Ramonescore, kind of the inverse that you have with the Rancid and the Clash, where you say like, I have the thing it was influenced by, so I don't need it. And like, I'm such a big Ramones person that a lot of times when I would hear Ramonescore stuff, and I still do this when I have a hard time going back to it because it just sounds like a rip off Ramones for a second,
Yeah.
because it is of
Right.
genres can be derivative. This stuff is very derivative of one band, like to the point that the specific songs that they're ripping off within the music, but that's almost clouds the real melodies and harmonies and the real genius of a lot of these songs with both of these
Oh,
bands.
oh, dude, we're gonna talk about that too, man. Because here's the thing: these are very much bands that were like, I want to sound like the Ramones, but I want to do it way better. Because, dude, let's be honest, musically speaking, like talent wise, with
Disagree majorly on this point that
you
you're
don't
about to
think that
make.
they're better guitar players than the Ramones.
I don't care that the Ramones
No,
have
no,
better songs, and I would rather listen. But I would rather
that's
listen. Like I know I get what you're
that's a
saying.
whole different conversation, though.
Okay, I get
Like, what do you
no, but
like better? Different conversation. Like, just
yeah.
talent, like sheer talent.
So I think I'll be in agreement with you. You can finish your point. I thought you were really going to say like that this stuff is just so much better as an
No,
end
no, no,
product.
no, no, no. I'm
That's
just
why I
saying,
was like,
like they
oh.
wanted to do what they were doing, but do it better, not necessarily create better songs. Because I don't know that you can create songs that are more timeless than the Ramones. I don't know that you can do that.
Uh-huh.
So yes, with all respect to the Ramones, I love them too. This is not a dig at the Ramones. This is just more or less praising these bands for having incredible musicianship. Uh, because I love the Ramones. It would be really hard to get me to, like you said, why would I need to listen to anything besides the Ramones if I wanted that kind of music? Well, they bring something different to the table, is my whole point. They bring guitar. They're more like the Ramones with the Beach Boys, and then like snotty punk attitude, which is different than the Ramones. So that's why I can listen to it. But like every really good Ramonescore band has a shtick, all of them.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. T Experience does, the Queers do, Screeching Weasel does, Masked Intruder specifically does. Like all these bands have a shtick, right? You can't do it without the shtick, because if it's without the shtick, you're just the Ramones. Well, we've already got the best version of that we can get. So I'm not arguing that Ramones are A, top tier, B, amazing. Like I'm not arguing that at all. I just think that like they weren't the best musicians. They said this themselves. So I don't think it's a hot take or anything, but I think you had to do that in order to get attention, though. You weren't going to be able to copy them and bring nothing else to the table without people going, why? Like, why?
It's almost as if the way I think of it is like these bands almost perform as if they were contemporaries of the Ramones and not influenced by the Ramones. Almost as
That's
if like
a good point.
As if they were just like say like if they were in the same scene drawing the same conclusions, but happened to be plopped in the middle of the 90s. And it's so and I don't know if I actually appreciate that or not. And let me tell you what I'm, and not to say, not in a negative way, but like I would say that I kind of respect a little bit more what like a Green Day and a Blink-182 would do, where they take the idea of the Ramones and then actually put their own spin on it rather than trying to perfect the Ramones, which is what I think like these bands kind of from like on the out, like it, as sort of a concept do. Now, when you dig a little deeper to these bands, I think there's more to them than that. But
I agree.
In terms of that veneer, it's a bit of a turnoff for me. At like as a genre as a whole, I've always sort of taken that sort of issue with Ramonescore, and like Mr. T Experience is I think more like you said, it's his voice that I think throws you off a little bit. It's the super 50s sound that sounds almost more 50s. Like I think the Queers are a little more Ramones sounding right off the bat, where this stuff you feel it's like 50s, and then it's like the punk and the Ramones sort of comes through it. Yeah.
Mr. T Experience would fall into that category of what'd you call it? From that time period.
The contemporary,
contemporary, more so than the Queers would. But like, see, it's just a matter of like, where do you go, left or right, when you get to this crossroads? Because you get to the crossroads and go, yeah, but I'd rather have Blink because they're doing something different. Where I go, no, I like what they're doing. I'll go this way because I like. It's just like I eat the same food every day, right? So why do I need different music? I like this music. Let me find other bands that sound kind of like this. I'm okay with the word generic is not a bad word to me. I like that word just fine. So it's really all about personal taste. And I'm not digging on anybody. Like I'm trying to be, as I get older and get more into this and do this longer, I just want to be open-minded about stuff. I don't really care necessarily what other people think as far as like, do I think it's good or bad? We can disagree on something, man. It doesn't matter. I don't give a shit, dude. I like what I like. You like what you like. And I'm not talking about Rob here, other folks. I'm talking about just the general audience. People sometimes want to go, oh, well, you don't like this much, so we can't be friendly or whatever. It's like, that doesn't make any sense, dude. Like, there's a bazillion different bands out there. Like, we're not going to all like the same shit. You know, people that like don't care about Rancid that I'm really good friends with. So many people. Like, it's just, I don't know. But I like, you know, I love this genre, man. And I don't know everything about it. There's a ton of bands I don't know about, but I know a fair bit. Every time I learn some more stuff about it, or hear a new band in this genre, it excites me because I've been trying to figure out why. So the Ramones took 1950s pop rock and roll, they sped it up and they yelled it. Well, one of my fondest memories as a kid was being in the car, and the only music we ever got to listen to was the oldie station, which was 50s to 60s pop rock, top 40 pop.
Mm-hmm.
So when I heard the Ramones the first time, I was like, oh, this is familiar to me. I like this. It's faster, which I'm good with because I'm a kid. So I always gravitated to that sound. So I think that's what it is about this music that I love, is that it reminds me of being a kid. I just never really put that together until recently. And so I love all of this 50s rocks, like doo-wop, love song, like R&B stuff, you know, hot rods, greasy hair. Like, that's my shit, man. I love it. Now, I don't look like that necessarily, but I will listen to that all day, every day. And the Mr. T Experience, I think, is one of the more unique voices in that genre. So I do understand why some people may not dig it so much, but once you get past that a little bit, the songwriting is just so damn good.
They're also very much like, so we always associate like Screeching Weasel, I think, as like the head of the snake with this genre, and all these other bands that are sort of like off to the side of them.
I guess so, huh?
But and I think that's just because they, outside of obviously like you know, bands that got super huge, they're the biggest of like the Lookout level bands,
right?
But Mr. T Experience, but Mr. T Experience is more of the Ramones as it pertains, I think, to Ramonescore. Like,
right.
They're much more of the trendsetter. They're actually, so like the Queers are from Boston. The Screeching Weasel is from Chicago. This is East Bay punk, Ramonescore, right at its kind of center. Like, Mr. T Experience did a lot of the creating of it. I think the establishing of it, and they stood out. Like, I think that here's the other thing on that too. Like, Dr. Frank always stood out with his musical taste. Like, even as a DJ, like, I think he would have been good friends with you at such of what you were just talking about. He was always playing on his college rock station a lot of 50 stuff, a lot of just tons of melodic stuff. And so when he came in, we think of Gilman as a very pop punky scene, but at its inception, it was just another like kind of punk
rock and roll.
Yeah. And you had, you know, you had Neurosis, you had some of these other guys, and this predates all of that. And Mr. T Experience, they talked about, Dr. Frank talked about it. His way of standing out is, let's be, and it's before he had the actual catchphrase of this song's about a girl, but let's be the cheesiest kind of like band we can be. Let's be the band because we're not really those kind of guys, even though we like that kind of music. Let's kind of go actually in that other direction, almost to like an extreme. So I think that was kind of like intentional to a bit. So like but it's like to what we were saying, you kind of need those sort of things in place to understand that it's both, it's not a joke, but it has a certain tone to it. And once you could start accepting it on those terms, I think it's really appealing. I will say, like, I learned about Mr. T Experience straight up from Tom DeLonge. Like that one.
Oh, really?
Just in interviews, he would always be talking about Mr. And at first I thought he was talking about the band T-Rex, like the 70s, like glitter rock band. And I was like, okay. And again, that Tom DeLonge, but this is like, and I kept hearing about like Mr. T Experience. And then somehow that led me to kind of figuring that was, you know, punk rock ish. And then to find out that, oh, they're this band that influenced all these other bands in this huge band. And when I hear their music, a lot of what I was saying kind of reminds me of a band like Blink-182, which is a kind of silly band that's sort of meant to be taken serious, that when you get past the sheen of it, you understand that there's melody there, and there's that all of those kind of good qualities about that band. I can see so much why Mr. T Experience was so influential on both the underground and I think on the mainstream.
I think people would be surprised to hear that Mr. T Experience was a big influence on Blink, but if you go back and listen to their first 3 records, you can hear it. Also, I said something earlier in the episode that I totally didn't realize I was just not saying correctly until you said something. I think I mentioned 2 California bands earlier, and that's not really what I meant to say. Like, I was just thinking of Lookout Records and all that Berkeley shit, and you said the Queers from Boston. I was like, oh, that's right. I fucking completely messed that up.
Yeah,
So,
the Rat is like famously a club on the
dude,
East Coast.
when you said that, I was like, oh, I'm so dumb, dude. I'm gonna get
But that
roasted for that.
that it still kind of counts, I would say, as California punk rock, kind of because it's on Lookout. It's
Yes,
associated with a lot of
but
that part of
I
yeah.
totally meant to. I didn't really. I just said it wrong. Is my point. Like, I know the Queers are not from California. I just misspoke and didn't catch it until you said something, and then I was like, "Ooh, that's bad." So,
Yeah,
anyways,
and
so when
they're
you're
not quite as
typing your mean comments, just understand that I know.
it's funny because Screeching Weasel very much has a Chicago. They're the Chicago band that's in Lookout. Like that very much is part of their identity. But you know, whatever.
But yeah, Mr. T Experience is an interesting band. I want to know where they got their name from. I mean, obviously, uh,
Yeah, I think it
you
was
know.
just a. I think it was just. No, you know what? He's talked about that. And shoot, now
Oh, really?
type that in the comment section. But I mean, it is off of obviously the A Team or whatever. But it's. I think he was just a silly guy, man. He has like a heck of a sense of humor. Like he's just he's one of the we get like the pioneers of punk
Ha!
humor. He belongs like on that Mount Rushmore.
All right, so check it out. I just had the foresight to like Google it as I was
Mhm.
fixing to say it. And it says, let's see here. In the summer of '85, the the four men formed the Mr. T Experience with, so and so, so and so. And it says the band's name was chosen on a whim, a kind of accidental thing, Portman recalled in a 1995 interview. There was kind of a concept behind it because in 1985, Mr. T had all these products. There was like Mr. T air freshener, socks, cereal, deodorant, and whatever. We thought we'd be the punk rock band, just another in a long line of products. Okay, not a great concept, but hey, one of our records, the title was "Too Late to Change the Name." That's awesome. I
Well,
like that it was just like a thing that was a timestamp essentially, and then they're like, "Oops, that did." We've been around too long for that to stay relevant and like funny. Oh
but
well, like
but their sound is very much like a timestamp from a time they're not even from. So
very
that
true.
kind of adds to them. And then what's cool is they have the coolest abbreviation of a band. Like
Oh,
how many times did I as a kid read the words MTX and have no idea that that's also the band Mr. T
so
Experience.
even as a fan of the band, I see that and I still don't think of Mr. T Experience.
Mm.
And I had a record in my record store. Somebody pointed out, like, "Oh, that's a good Mr. T Experience record," and I was like, I just passed it up. I didn't even stop and really look at it, man, because I just didn't. It didn't click. Because most of my catalog of theirs that I owned was on like mixtapes. I never really
Mm.
saw album art. You know what I'm saying? So like, I don't
Yeah.
even know what half the songs that I heard by them. I couldn't tell you what they were from. They were just songs that I had on mixtapes because I was given 90-minute tapes recorded with a bunch of punk songs and I don't think kids today would understand that really. And I never
A,
went and did digging because I just didn't care. I guess I don't know, man.
a lot of like this type of punk I heard through tapes. Like very
Yeah,
similar, like you're saying, and so because like it's just kids can't appreciate how accessible music is to them. That's
man,
just what it is. And so like
so much
you
easier
have a
now.
tape, and then your friend you borrow the tape from your friend, and they have it for a little while. And that's just kind of it doesn't like it seems
Well,
crazy to think of now, but that's just how it was.
what I would do is my mom had a dual stereo cassette deck. I have one now in here. It's really nice, and I have it like this for this exact reason, just in case I ever need to do this. But I would go get a tape for my buddy, and in my house I had two stacks of tapes. I had 60 minutes and I had 90 minutes. And I would come and be like, okay, what tape did they give me? Oh, it's a 60-minute tape. I'd go get a new blank 60-minute, and I would just dub the whole ass tape. And I had all kinds of tapes from all my friends. I had probably 30 tapes at one point in this little box, all handwritten, and they wouldn't have song titles. It would just be like track 1 through 4, Mr. T Experience. Track 5 through 8 is Less Than Jake. Tracks, 9 through 15, Rancid, whatever it was. But it was all these little mixtapes. And my sister had those for a long time. I wish she still had them. I would do a lot to get those back, man, because it would just bring back so many crazy. I bet there's a lot of songs on there that I forgot are even on those by bands that I love today. I bet there was like some old Blink that I didn't realize was Blink. There's probably all kinds of stuff on there that I
There's
didn't.
mislabeled stuff too. I remember thinking certain albums were different albums because that's what it said on the mixtape. Like, no, that
Man,
wasn't the album.
dude,
But assuming I
that
listened
was
to
like
that the whole time.
LimeWire before LimeWire. So that's pretty funny that their name was just like a a joke kind of, and it just they stuck around too long, and it became like a why is that band named that?
Yeah, like every time you hear those stories, you know that band like was supposed to suck. Like that was
Right.
they were not supposed to be. That's yeah, that's just the way it goes.
So let's see here. Did you happen to have any songs that you liked? Because this
Yeah.
album was 13 minutes and 30 excuse me 13 songs and 35 minutes, which I think is funny because the other album is almost exactly the same.
Yeah. So I really like I Don't Get It. It had like a 80s Ramones type of vibe, very like mid tempo. And it comes off of She's No Rocket Scientist and What's in the Cuckoo Clock, which if you're not totally bought in on the Ramones core thing, it can kind of start wearing at you. And then but you get I Don't Get It, and then that goes right into Zero, which I think maybe I'll say it now. I was gonna say maybe the best song on this album, but I'll say that save that for a different one. Zero was a song though that they were shopping around on the demo before this, and I think yeah, that's what it was. I think Sub Pop was actually interested in them,
Oh,
and so
nice.
Zero was one of the. And you're talking about Sub Pop in 1990, so like the one that had Nirvana before
I was gonna
Nirvana.
say
Before,
Bleach.
yeah, and you're in the East Bay. You're not that far, uh,
Right. No, no,
from
no.
Seattle.
Yeah, no. East Bay and Seattle are fairly close compared to like anything in Texas.
Mhm. And then I think like the song Parasite is another one that really
Good
stood
song.
out to me. It was like a perfect blend of like the melody and their humor. Also where I hear a lot of that the Blink influence. I think that song in particular. And I think I was trying to figure out the lyrics. I assume it's about like someone with a zine or even like major labels or something. But it was I always love that subject matter. I'm Breaking Out was another one that I think has like a little bit of a slow start and then really gets going. Could have been almost like ahead of its time. You forget this is you think this is the 90s. Well, it's 1990. So everything
Right.
influeed by this is 80s ish.
80s. Yep.
And then the last one that really I like is The Girl Who Still Lives at Home.
Nice.
It's to me it's almost like a Green Day type song, like in the way it gets like that 50s pop ballad meets like a pop punk kind of song. I felt it was this one was less of Ramones derivative and more like Ramones influence. I don't think there's really a bad song on this album. I like the cover that they sent me a postcard. I think that's pretty good. So Long Sucker, I guess, is the one that I could do without.
Okay.
If I had to cut one, which this album's short, you don't need to cut any of the songs. So Long
Right.
Sucker, I guess I could do without if I had to. But overall, I mean, it's a really good album. I don't know, is this your top album by them, or would you
I don't
think?
even have a top album.
Yeah,
I don't know enough of their catalog to know. I know that every song I hear, I almost always just go, "Yeah, it's a pretty good song." Like they
yeah.
don't have stuff that I thought was like just ugh, that I can recall. Again, maybe I should go through and do like a ranking or something, man. I enjoy them.
I think of myself as generally fond of this album and then the Blue album, the one that was pretty big, the Bob with the Ba 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 song and all that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's a
I
good
always think
record.
of these two albums, and this one's like as the primordial one, and that one as like the two albums that I really gravitate to the most. But again, it's like we're talking about. For me, the Ramones core bands aren't really album bands; they're more. I kind of drift in and out and pick out songs and
I think that's a thing you can do with bands like this. That honestly,
mhm.
there's a lot of bands that you have to listen to their whole record. I like when a band has like I like to listen to their whole record most of the time, but I can also appreciate picking out half the record and putting it on a tape with maybe a mix of all their songs, and it's just one side of a tape. It's just a bunch of your favorite Mr. T Experience songs. Um,
The album before I should say the album they have before this, that Blue one, I think is also very very good. The one with the Gilman Street song, I just think that one's pretty rad.
let's see. Oh yeah, big black bugs bleed blue blood.
Blue,
Good
yeah,
grief, dude.
yeah. Thanks, Dr.
Fuck
Frank.
that. Yeah, dude,
Jeez.
that's ridiculous. So I I think Parasite's about a girlfriend, by the way.
Oh,
That's what it seemed like to me. I think you can make whatever you want to make out of lyrics most of the
yeah.
time.
If it makes
Uh,
you think about cool lyrics, I think that's cool. So,
my top three songs on this album, though, are "She's No Rocket Scientist," "I'm Breaking Out," and "Zero." Like those are the three. I also really liked "Psycho Girl" quite a bit
mhm.
as well. Uh, "The Girl Who Lives at Home." There's a bunch of good songs on this album, but those three are my favorite three. That once I got done listening to the album in full, like I went back and revisited those just to make sure. I was like, okay, I think I like these three the best. And I went back and listened to them, and I was like, yeah, these are good songs, man. I listened to them pretty loud. Parker liked dancing to them, so that was fun. But yeah, man, I think overall this is a pretty good record. I don't. I don't know a lot about the band. I mean, I just like what I've heard from them. I wanted to go back and listen to an album. That's all it really
Mm.
boils down to. I'm not some historian. I just,
Yeah,
hey,
and
let's talk about this for a little bit.
they haven't done a lot since like the early 2000s, really. Since basically since Lookout went away, they've been kind of just, I think more. I mean, they'll play shows and stuff, but they're more of like a legacy than a really active band.
I'll tell you the one thing about Mr. T experience that is special to me. It's two things. One, that tape I got was probably one of the very first times I ever owned punk rock music, right? And so that's in the back of my mind all the time. And so my very first trip out of Texas, I went to Vegas with Carissa, and the very first record store that we went to, the very first thing I ever bought outside of Texas for myself was a Mr. T Experience 7-inch. It was at this record store. It was just on the wall, and I was like, "That's the one I want." I always like to buy a 7-inch when I go places, and I was like, "That's the one." I didn't even have to think about it. I was like, "That's the one I want." And so they're just a band that like I don't know everything about. I like their music, and yeah, that's about that. I think I would probably give this album like a 7.5 to an 8, somewhere in that neighborhood. It's definitely above average.
Mhm.
Now, is it creeping into that like fantastic range? Not to me. It's good though. But yeah, getting used to his voice is going to be a chore to some people, I would think.
Yeah, I would probably put it around there as well. But like, I say that with a bit of a caveat because I'm saying that as a criticism, I think more of the genre than I would say of the song. So then, in terms of on its own terms, it's as good as I think it can kind of get with this kind of stuff. So, I would give it like a full endorsement there. But my personal ranking would be in that 7 out of 10, which I mean that's pretty darn good. That's all that's anything below the greatest albums, which is
Right.
pretty darn good.
That's the thing, man. 7 is a pretty good number, in my opinion. If people don't think that's a good number, then they're misunderstanding how rankings work, in my opinion.
It's because C's have been associated with average in our society. That's what it is.
I mean,
Seven,
yeah,
7 out of 10 is not bad in any other context.
right. I mean,
Except for
100%. Okay,
except for we did that's a C. I don't know why I'm having an education rant on a punk rock podcast, but there you
because
go.
that's what we do here. All right. Yeah, man. Mr. T Experience. Go check him out. Listen to that album. It's pretty good. I want to know what people think about his vocals. All right. This one's about to be a very interesting conversation. So, back in 1990 as well, on Lookout Records
Now
from
let me correct you real quick on this.
Boston.
No,
Okay.
that's the thing to correct you on. It was not released on Lookout in 1990. It was released on Lookout in 1993.
Yes. Who released it first? Was it a. Well, no, this was a.
Sh-
They released
Shake,
this stuff?
Shaken Street released it in 1990.
Shit. Really?
Lookout re-released it in 1993.
Man, I had that all kinds of messed up. Okay. It was a re-release, certainly, wasn't it? Yep.
Yeah, and
Yep.
so
Oh, because they signed it in '93 and they re-released this album
right,
and then dropped their second album.
people generally
Oh,
associate this kind of as like their Lookout debut, but it's like these songs are very old by the time
this is this
they're
is
out on
this is
Lookout.
another reason why I like doing this show, man. I like to learn shit because I am not like uber knowledgeable about
And,
any of this stuff,
and
man.
right now, Spotify has up both versions. I guess so. Last year they released so I think Ben Weasel remastered the one that's on Lookout was remastered by Ben Weasel. But there's famously like not that many improvements other than the track listing is a little bit different because as raw as the recordings were, there was only so much you could do to remaster
Well,
them. But these original ones have also been remastered and were released, I think, last year. So both are actually, and you can kind of compare them right now on streaming services, which is
well,
kind
I
of
was so before we even really jump into this conversation, I will say I did actually do that. I listened to both of them, and I prefer the old version like
cool.
quite a bit. I don't know what they did to the newer version, but it doesn't sound good to me.
So you
Uh,
prefer the like
the
the
the black,
1990?
yeah, the black
Yeah,
cover, yeah, the black cover
yeah,
was the one I.
and I would think that, and I don't think it sounds like more raw or anything than
No, it sounds
necessarily.
better
Yeah, it just
to
it's a
me.
little more catchy. I can't. I am in total agreement with you. And I've listened to this album mostly though. The Lookout recording I would say is the one that I'm most familiar with.
Man, I'm really irritated with myself. I knew that this was their first album, and I knew that it was re-released on Lookout. I don't know why I just keep calling it a Lookout release.
Hmm.
Whatever, it doesn't really
Well,
matter.
because I mean that's most people who got this album got it as a Lookout album. So like
Right.
that's not unfair.
No, it just irks me because I know I get roasted for this shit all the time. I have these brain farts all the time. It is what it is. People love talk shit to me. It's
But
okay.
it goes on the line if people are watching the full episode of what we're saying of a band kind of handing your album to a label. It's another instance
Right.
of that.
Well,
Yeah.
100% for sure. Let's see here.
So
This label did crumble. It crumbled, and they, I guess, didn't press or didn't pay for all the copies. So there was only 160 copies of the first pressing floating around. Boy, I bet that's expensive.
I think one of the band members actually has some of them. Like
Joe,
they,
I would imagine, is the one who's got them.
I don't think it's Joe.
Oh,
I think it's another band member that like
really?
or it's like yeah, I think another band member actually has.
Well, I know that they did like photocopied covers for the first pressing of it or something. Like that's what I heard. I don't know, man. I don't know all the details on it. I talked to Joe once. He was super nice.
Mhm.
I think the queers get a lot of pushback that's unwarranted. Um, yeah. So this is their debut album. Okay, it's 12 songs. It's like 34 minutes, maybe 35. I think it's somewhere in that neighborhood. But apparently, this was recorded over the course of a couple of years as well. Yeah, 1986 and 1988, various band members and session musicians, backing guitarist, and Joe. Dude, that's crazy. So I guess when they were first writing these songs, Joe wasn't going to sing, like
Yeah,
lead sing.
well, because they've always had two singers, yeah, but I think they had
Right.
a different singer to start with, and he was like, yeah,
Yeah, they
side
were
picker.
like teaching each other, like, here, you sing these lead parts, and then he's like, okay, and then you sing these backup
Mhm.
parts, these harmonies, and then they realized that they were just better off doing those parts instead of teaching them, because it doesn't make any
Mhm.
sense to try to teach
Mhm.
somebody the opposite. Like that makes no sense. But I think it's cool that that is even kind of how it went down. I hear a lot of times I hear in bands that the singer wasn't supposed to be the singer. That's very common.
I mean,
Uh,
the Ramones. We're talking about Joey was the drummer when
right,
they started
dude. The
out.
Ramones. I think Metallica wasn't supposed to be the James wasn't supposed to be the
No,
singer of Metallica. It's just crazy that like that's a very common trope amongst
I
bands, musical
like
groups.
iconic frontman too.
Right,
That's
right.
what we're talking about. Like Joey Ramone and James Hetfield. Like that's it doesn't get any bigger in their genres
Really
than those two
doesn't.
guys.
It really
And
doesn't.
it also goes to show how like cool rock music is. That it just brings out like weird people and unconventional people that suddenly end up as people as frontman or as it's weird art form in that way.
Right. So, okay, the Queers are a band that I one of the first like punk rock hoodies I ever had was a Queers hoodie. And for that reason I was attached to them because I thought like, man, this is a cool hoodie, and I listened to their music based on that. If I'm honest, that was my reasoning behind getting into them. Some of their music was on some of those old mixtapes, but like I got this hoodie and I thought, well, I can't be rocking this hoodie if I don't know what the hell I'm talking about. So
Yeah.
I listened to some of their music, and I just got attached to them through that. I think I think people are oftentimes trying to like romanticize and glamorize like how they got interested in a band. No, I just had a hoodie that I think it was given to me, and I was like, cool, this is a cool hoodie. I guess I should go listen to this band's music now since I have their clothing. And I went and listened to it. I enjoyed it. And I just kind of was like, yeah, it's super snotty, tongue in cheek, real like bratty and real immature. Like, I think this has so much to do with like this and the Descendants. I have to fold about the Descendants thing with Blink 182. But like that kind of songwriting and lyric writing is where Blink was probably inspired the most, because bro, I
Mhm.
can tell you, if you listen to the early Queer stuff and then you listen to early Blink stuff, you're like, oh, if these dudes weren't fans of that band, like please explain to me how that didn't happen, because
I mean, I think that Felix the Cat logo is in like four of their videos, so I'm pretty sure
is it?
they were yeah, like
I don't really watch music videos, so I don't know.
they were always like wearing their stuff, and I could that could be a Mandela effect thing, but that's I
There's,
associate that logo with like those guys wearing that stuff, and it may just be because it's the point that you're making.
somebody was just talking about Mandela effects in the stream the other night because they were like, no, this album's got this song on it, and they were like trying so hard to remember this song, and then I kept telling them like, it was a Cox bar song. It was Andrew. Shout out Andrew. What's up, dog? He kept going, no, I'm pretty sure it's this song, and then he was like, he literally said it. He's like, man, I think maybe I'm having a Mandela effect. I'm looking all over the place. I can't find that damn song, and I wasn't sure what he was talking about. So I was like, what song? Because I know a fair bit about Cox bars song titles, and I was like, I don't think that's a song by them, and it was funny. It was just those that happens a lot when you talk about music.
Yeah,
You'll
yeah, I'm
have
like
like a
because it could be like the guy's wearing a Thrasher skateboarder shirt, and maybe I'm just convinced I'm confusing that with because I my first memory of the Queers is their imagery, is the cat logo and like the Chuck
oh,
Taylor. Oh,
interesting.
like that was my first ever like exposure to them, and I because of their name, I assumed when I was younger they were a much older band. They just kind of sound like the Germs or a band like the Queers sounds like it comes out of the 80s, right? And then
Yes.
and then in my mind I thought they were going to be like the most hardcore punk band of all time with all of that in mind, and then you hear what they actually sound like, and it just really it always had thrown me off.
That definitely got that. I definitely thought they were going to be a more heavy band when I
Mm.
first heard them, based solely on their name, because I was like, interesting, like, oh shit. Um, when you think the Queers, you definitely think it's either going to be honestly a queer band or something incredibly heavy, because you got to have some brass balls to name your band that. And I mean,
Yeah,
even when I
I,
talked to Joe about it, he told me the only reason they called their band that was to get under people's skin, which I
I
think is quite hilarious.
yeah, and that was the other association I think people had with them for a while, that they would be like queercore, right? Like Pansy Division and some
Right.
of those bands, and they're not that they're not that either. I think
Dude, there's a whole resurgence of like queer hardcore right now, man. Shout
oh, is
out to
there?
Grudge Packer. Dude, that band's awesome. Dude, what a great name. Grudge Packer. Oh, dude.
Yeah,
It's
doesn't
yeah,
get any
dude.
more punk than that. That's great.
Dude, I love
That's
that band.
awesome.
But yeah, there's like, I think that there's a much there's a large like space to be filled by queer music, especially within punk,
Hmm.
because there's a whole different perspective you can come from if that's part of who you are,
Hmm.
that heterosexual people can't really. It's just like being a white guy trying to talk about like you understand the black experience. No, you don't.
You don't. Yeah,
You don't.
it
You
wouldn't
don't.
resonate.
Anyways, I don't want to get off into some tangent about like politics and music again, because we're going to get into that here in just a minute anyways.
Mhm.
But you know this band started out and they just wanted to be in your face, bratty. They love the Ramones and the Beach Boys, and I mean that's what you can hear anytime you listen to Joe Queer talk. He talks about the Beach Boys every time he talks. They were like Ramones, Beach Boys, and snotty teenager, aesthetics and lyrical writing. Like, just fuck you. I'm gonna do what I want. Fart noises, dick jokes, and I mean, like, that is the Queers. Like, that is who they are to the core. Uh, I think with all the stuff going on in music right now, specifically, my boy Andrew was mentioning the Queers lyrical content. Now, I went back. There's a couple of songs that I was like, I don't know about this, but I think a lot of what they're saying is very tongue in cheek, and I think a lot of it is said strictly to get under people's skin and get on people's nerves. And I think that if we're going to judge bands on their lyrical content, I think that might need to go in tandem with their behavior. And I don't know. I don't know. I don't know a lot about the Queers' personal life. So I mean, were they doing stupid shit back then? Like I don't know. I don't recall hearing that.
Their reputation was more drinking and drugs than
So that's
more
that's
than
what
a,
I was.
more than what you're referring to, like
That's what I
there were
thought.
this roving gang of homophobes, or anything like that. They were drug addicts and alcoholics, and I think heroin actually played into the band,
Well,
and one of them actually passed away. The other main dude, right? I think of the Queers, he
that
passed away in
sucks.
like the early 2000s. So that was more their reputation as more partiers
Well,
was
I know
really
that
the
they
thing
were
with
talking
them.
about like young girls and stuff, and I'm like, yeah, but when you're like 21 and you're talking about a 17-year-old girl, it's not that weird. Now, are you in your 30s still playing clubs and then still hanging out with young girls? That's when it gets weird. So I don't know their history, so I'm speaking out of ignorance here. I don't
All of that
know.
stuff, I don't believe they've like what you're referring to there. Now, some people have taken like some issues with some opinions that Joe Queer has had like in the last couple
Yeah,
of years, but in terms of actual, I think and
behavior.
there's plenty of this in punk rock. So I think not to
Right.
say it didn't happen, but that has not necessarily. I think their reputation was more of partying than anything
Well,
else.
I just think that a lot of times my point is that when you look at bands that are being misbehaving and you're like, yeah, well, I mean, even the Queers talk about it all the time. It's like, yeah, but talking silly shit and saying things that might be crude, might be a little bit like, gross, but it wasn't that gross and cringy when it was made. And you have to look at things through a lens of 1990 when you're listening to a record from 1990. That doesn't mean that you can't now go, yeah, I wouldn't do that now, and I don't feel the same way now. But back then, things were just different. So
Well,
lyrical stuff was different. What was acceptable was different, and so that doesn't mean that you shouldn't, say call it out a little bit. But I mean, writing
and
a
two,
song about a 17-year-old girl and then actually being some like big giant rock star guy that's actually going around trying to get with 17-year-old girls are I think a little different. But I don't know. It's a
Yeah,
sticky.
it's
It's a tough subject to tackle, and I'm not one to like. I'm not judging nobody, but I'm not condoning anything. I just think that you know a lyric in a song isn't the same as an action. So
no, and also this is parody music of music that used to talk about those themes all the time. That we, for some reason, we don't engage in conversations about why 1950s music has all those same reference points.
well,
But
that's a valid point though. It is parody of that, and I think that people don't want to accept that.
also, though, like even the queers
And
themselves,
Andrew, I'm not talking about you. I'm just you
just
sparked
referencing,
this
yeah.
thought in my head. Well, he'll know what I'm talking about. I You sparked this thought. I was like, I don't know that their songs hold the same weight as somebody's like atrocious behavior. So
Right.
uh,
No, I think there's a conversation to be had about that and maybe the
right.
influence of that, but I think that's not in the same ballpark. Now, I will say this on the Lookout release specifically because this became like an issue I think within the Lookout like staff or something. Like they were actually especially with one of the songs on this album with the song Gay Boy. They
Mhm.
they kind of they're a little bit of an impasse, and like the thing about the Queers was they were re-releasing their album, so they wanted to have all the songs on there in terms of the spirit of the re-release. It's not they were
Right.
so attached to this one song. So what they ended up doing, and there didn't seem to be a lot of consternation about that. And kind of talk about how different the times were that there wasn't controversy about this. They simply added a disclaimer to the notes of the Lookout release. And it's funny because there's lots of offensive music that the Queers put
Dude,
out throughout the years, but for whatever reason for this one they put that out in terms
what
of the
does it
release.
say?
It just says that like
We don't
uh
align with this song or whatever. We think it's
yeah yeah something like something about some our songs are somewhat parody and humor and that it's kind of like a disclaimer, kind of the things you were saying basically.
well and they have every right to put that out there, and I think that people should be a little less. I think there's a lot of hypocrisy in like just the general public with what they think and say about musicians, artists. And I'm not again excusing any behavior, but I am saying if you're a label that's buying a catalog and there's a song on an album that you don't necessarily like, you should be able to put in the liner notes like, "Hey, we just are re-releasing this album, but this song, we get it. We also you don't have to remove the song from the album." I think that that's a wild ass expectation, personally. But I think that if you don't like the song, you should not buy it. You know, you have every right in the world to not listen to it, don't support it, and don't champion it. But to remove the song that I think is mostly done tongue in cheek and in jest, because I listened to that song today like 3 times trying to decide what I thought about it. And I don't have to like every single word that they write in order to like the band. And I'm not sure I understand that song, to be honest with you. I don't know how. Uh, what's the word I'm looking for here? You know, caricature.
Like earnest maybe it's supposed to
Yeah,
be.
I don't. Was that song? I didn't necessarily hear anything that I thought was necessarily super bad about it either, though. It was like telling a story more or less, but I can see how some people might get super defensive by that song. So
Yeah, I think that
it's.
song is very much open to interpretation. Like
I
I
think that's
actually
the
went
problem I
through
was
it.
having
So
with it is that there
and because
wasn't anything set in stone.
there
And I was like, I don't know how to feel about this.
there's not because I understand there's one specific line in the song where you can understand how it's a pretty distasteful song. The rest of it though has what a lot of like and there's plenty of homophobic punk, but when punk generally would deal with this stuff is just these things in society that especially at the time 1990 that we do not talk about. And so it's
Right.
bringing those things to the forefront. I think people on all sides of the arguments kind of misunderstand that part of like what can't so the things that like the Queers are saying in 1990 are offensive today because they're not shocking. It's because
Right.
like and so they are just pure in the case of I would say the Queers. I think what they were doing was purely loaded, purely shock value, and I think there is a difference between that and say like Screwdriver or something like that. That is
Right.
the difference between making blatantly hateful music. And I don't think this was. I mean, this has some tones to it that simply just would not be used anymore. But that also,
Well, people
I don't.
change, times change, and
Yeah, and
behavior from the artist. Because I mean, I've talked to Joe a number of times and had him on the show. He doesn't strike me as the homophobic, hateful type. Now, is he a little bit opinionated and old headed? Yeah, he's a little bit of an old head. He's a little opinionated. That doesn't mean he's hateful. You know what I'm saying? You don't have to like everything about somebody. I mean, Yeah,
anything frozen in time from another time is gonna stick out when it's in
right.
a contemporary. And people think you're being a snowflake, or that. No, that's just kind of like. But the thing is, it's sometimes we isolate one piece of media and claim like that was the problem with society. And it's like, no. Watch any comedy movie from like 1990 to 2003. This is the humor that is in there. So
Yeah.
it is not the cause. It may be a symptom of the culture that we were in, that was the way to be punk rock back then, to be offensive. Like, that's a conversation
Well, it's
maybe
also
to
a history
have.
lesson. It's a history lesson, man. If you erase everything that you did bad, you'll just repeat those mistakes over and over and over and over. If it's in your face and you can look at it, you won't behave that way. Well, maybe not everybody, but you know what I'm saying. Like that's kind of a thing, man. If you ignore your mistakes, you are doomed to repeat them. Like that's just facts. But I just don't think there's anything hateful about their music, and anybody that wants to say there is not listening to it and paying attention to it. They're certainly not talking to or hearing from the people involved with the music.
It's more, I could say, I think it's more, you could argue it's distasteful more than hateful. I
Oh,
think
sure,
yeah. And I
sure,
think
but that's what they're aiming for.
that's a distinction. Yeah. That is specifically their aim.
They
And I
literally want to piss off people and then have a bunch of people that like pissing off people. Dude, it's like trolls, dude. They're basically trolling people.
right. Which is completely different than when someone does it to literally hurt the people that they're intending. Like, what, again, like the screwdriver example, when you're
Right.
riling up people, like, to go do something, basically, that is a completely different conversation than kind of a bad episode of Mad TV, which is what you
Right.
can argue like the queers can be, but with much better melody than any Mad TV episode ever had.
Well, let's move on from this because I think we're going to essentially start repeating ourselves a bunch. I just wanted to address it because I do think it warrants a conversation. I don't think it's anything that we need to like freak out about, but I do think it deserves uh, some talk. And I think that I kind of ride the fence on this one. If I'm honest with you, like I understand some of the complaints, but I also don't necessarily think that it's this big of a deal. So, but I, I'm open to growth, learning, and change like anybody else should be. But yeah, anyways, so within the album, outside of the controversial lyrics, you've got absolutely fantastic musicianship and like singing. It's incredible that I know this was like their first full length, but it wasn't their first release. But doggone, man, this is very early in their career.
Mm-hmm.
My goodness, these dudes were good at writing songs.
Mm-hmm.
And within these albums, you can hear the influence of the Beach Boys a lot more than you can some of the other Ramonescore bands. But Joe talks about that a whole lot throughout his career, how he just really, really admires and loves the Beach Boys. Yeah, dude, I don't know. What are your thoughts on this album musically?
I really like the variation again of the Ramonescore type of stuff, where it's like I can kind of appreciate going into some of these different. If you're going to be Ramonescore, might as well go all the way. Why just do the first album when there's a band that has 15 albums to pick from, and even a band that has
because
multiple.
when you stay around as long as the Ramones, what does Fat Mike say?
Yeah, how good was their 16th? Yeah, everyone remembers their 16th album too, and that's kind of a good thing. Like, yeah, it doesn't matter because and what he's really meaning by that, your hardcore fans kind of love everything you do anyway.
Right.
So what does it matter? And so like, and with both those bands, with me, he's absolutely right. And I think probably the same thing with Joe here. A song like Junk Freak, which sounds like a Ramone song, but it's a it's a Dee Dee Ramone style Ramone song, and there's a few of them on here that are more in that Dee Dee Ramone style, which is a much heavier, uglier style, quite frankly, than the Joey style.
Yeah, it's a more messy, more chaotic because he's a more messy, chaotic person.
Yeah, and even though, and he obviously he wrote more of the Joey song, but when he sings, it's like it sounds like a heroin addict who's singing. Applies to both bands in the case of this. Now, I Met Her at the Rat is just like again, several Ramones songs kind of merged together. It's almost like I have here like the KKK Took My Baby Away mixed with like this contemporary pop punk sound that they were still a part of, and as I mentioned, the Rat being the Boston club. I think you can probably relate right now to Goodbye California after your last couple of weeks.
Dude, this album was really, really fun to listen to. I hadn't heard it in quite some time.
The last one I will say that I really like is Rambo Rat. Again, another kind of like Dee Dee Ramone style song, and in the register of kind of Commando by the Ramones. It reminds me of both of those songs, but done like again, their own originality, and still somehow like more silly than the Ramones. And I don't know how that is possible, but it kind of
Well,
is.
because the Ramones took themselves really seriously, but
Mhm.
they oftentimes weren't real serious. But the
Right.
Queers are like, we're gonna do that too, but we're gonna do it and know we're doing it. And it's like,
Mm.
okay, with some self what's that called when you can look at
Like
yourself?
deprecating. Yeah.
Yeah, but you understand what you are and what you're about. Whereas the Ramones, I think, oftentimes didn't really understand like kind of how they may have come off or how they look to the general public or how they
Yeah,
they
all of their actions were much more pure and much less like derivative. Everyone else is derivative of
right.
the things they did as awkward naturals, and that's what you get by being first. Like you get to set the tone.
I wanted to just make a point that Rambo song is another one of those songs that may have like some lyrical content that back in 1990 was okay to say and behave like, but I think now would be looked at as not okay. And if I ever get to talk to Joe again, I'm going to ask him like, hey, how do you approach doing this stuff live? I want to see a modern Queers set list. I want to see what they're playing, and I want to just look at the songs that they're playing because I'm just interested in that. I
They
want to, this whole thing because I mean,
they
you
tour
got to
quite
think,
often too, so like
yes,
they're pretty active.
you got to think somebody that's 15 years older than me is going to have a far different view of the world than even I do, which is going to be even way more different than somebody in their 20s. So I can understand how some younger folks would hear this band and not just not drive with it at all. They may not get it. They may not want to get it. They may not care to get it, and that's okay. Um, yeah, it's weird, man, when you get into these kind of personal politics that, like, because my rule of thumb is always to just be nice, man. Try to be nice to people. There's no reason to be mean. So, um,
Well, and it's funny because there's a few different things. Like a lot of these bands are very political, but like their politics and their social politics or their social like those two things are very different. I think in our modern times we kind of have squished those
right.
like there's a lot of people I think I have the same politics as, but I have different sort of sets of like social values and stuff like that. And that's just
Isn't that weird?
part of life. Yeah.
People are intricate, man. We're a very
Like
intricate.
I've got a set list here
Oh no, shit. There you go.
from the Punk Rock Museum actually.
Oh,
From
nice. Is it from a
March
modern set?
14th.
A modern?
Yeah. Yeah, from
Oh, damn.
like earlier this month. Let's see. Let me pull it up.
Oh shit. Okay, like a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, so we've got I Can't Stop Farting, Night of the Livid Queers, My
Oh
Old
my
Man's a
goodness.
Fatso, Monster Zero, I Spent the Rent, Sheena's a Punk Rocker, See You Later, Fuckface, This Place Sucks, Blabbermouth, I Hate Everything, Kicked Out of the Weeblos, and You're Tripping. What a great
Okay,
band.
so that tells me right there that maybe they also kind of understand that some of the lyrical content is just, yeah, we did that in 1990. We're not trying to act as if we were perfect back then. So like, because I didn't hear, was there even a single song off this album on there?
No, I'm going through, and I'm looking to find. I'm going. They have the same basic set list. A few different songs. The song "No Tit" made it onto one, so we've got that going.
I think people need to be a little more
Wait,
reasonable with their anger is all, I guess. I don't know, man. There's so much gnarly shit going on right now.
is Love on this album? It is, isn't it? Oh,
It is,
and
yeah.
and
Yeah.
they played I Met Her at the Rat on March
Oh,
4th.
nice. Okay, nice. Yeah, Love, Love, Love is one of the songs that I really enjoy off this album.
Yeah.
I also like Gay Boy. I think that it's a Rainbow Rat's a good song. Burger King Queen's a great song. The musicianship on this album is fantastic. The earlier mix and master of it, I think, is pretty great. I don't really like the remix of it or master, whatever they did to it. I don't like that. I like the vocal melodies. I like the singing on this album. They're a really good band. It's easy to figure out why they were able to get a fan base and keep it because they're just excellent musicians.
Dude, I want to look this up. So I know Ben. So Ben brought them to Lookout, basically. I want
From Boston, right? No, I'm playing. It's just driving me nuts now.
Okay, he did not produce this. He remixed this album. I believe he produced their next couple of albums.
Yes, he didn't produce their first one.
Okay, yeah, but he was and Larry talked about it in his book a little bit that he heard the Queers early on and didn't think much of them, and it was really, he credits Ben for saying that, like, and wanting to produce them, like really taking the responsibility on of producing them.
That's awesome.
So it's a positive contribution to punk rock by Ben Weasel, depending on your perspective of the Queers.
Finally. Yeah, Ben Weasel. Um, yeah, dude. I just
Let's
I
get him on the show.
what I dude, I would. I think what happens is that it's easy to be like you have all kinds of people that are in this mixed bag of punk rock people, right? And then you have this isn't even within punk rock only, man. This is in like everyday life. This happens. I see it, and it just drives me nuts. One person is like maybe like I won't even say like angry, but a little irritated by a situation. And then a second person hears that and they go, "Oh, I also don't like that." So then they get a little more mad together. And then it becomes this like mob mentality where it's like nobody's really even thinking about what's going on. Nobody actually knows what the situation is. A lot of people are making assumptions. I really hope that I don't do that often. I try not to, man. I try to think for myself. My only point is like there's so much shit going on right now that it's making me sad, honestly. All these people that like we did a video on that band 15, and then it comes to find out Jeff Ott was a scumbag. I'm like, well, I didn't know that, man.
Oh, really? Like,
Yeah,
is there
it's
some bad
bad,
stuff about against Crimshine
bro.
and everything, right? Like that's the same
Man,
guy.
yes, dude.
Oh.
Like, look, I was never a big 15 fan, so I didn't know. And yeah, it's a topic for another conversation. We can talk about it off the video if you want. It sucked. But that's why all this has been on my mind so much is because it's just all this stuff's happening with these modern bands, and then I do a video of a band completely unrelated, and I find out that guy was a dickhead. Like, apparently he did some gnarly shit. Apparently he came out and said, "Yes, I did that. I apologize, and I've changed." And he's trying to make amends. But then he also went like super hard on somebody else for doing something sketchy. And it's like, yeah, but that's kind of glass house throwing stones type shit. But I just stop being shitty people, guys. Come on, like I'm so tired of people that are rad. But I will say this: punk rock is full of fucked up people. And if you listen to Jeff Ott's lyrics, his lyrics are incredibly dark, man. They're fucked up. So I'm not surprised that he's done gnarly shit. I'm not excusing it, but like anybody that's surprised by that, please explain why. Listen to that guy's lyrics, and you're like, that guy's life has been pretty messed up, or at least it was when he was younger. So, hurt people type shit. Like, are you surprised that he did some nasty stuff? I'm not. Wish he hadn't. Don't condone it. Wish he would just, wish people would just behave. And that goes for the people that fucked his life up too. Like, man, what are we doing?
Oh, I'm seeing a Reddit thread here. Okay.
Yeah, bro. I read a lot of that. It made me very sad. But, look, I personally try to do right. I personally try to treat people with respect. Okay, we can argue in the comments of somewhere, but I'm never like a mean, nasty person. I don't try to do that stuff. So have your opinions. I don't know, man. Tell me what I did wrong in this episode. That's what people like to do. It's wild. But yeah, the queers. They didn't grow up. I don't know what this album title is all about.
Yeah, it never happened. Yeah,
they failed miserably, Joe. I don't know if you're watching this, buddy, but just shout out Joe King.
Follow through on that.
Did not, man. Shout out Joe King for being super cool when I talked to him. I would love to talk to him again one day and just hear some more about his lyrical content. Like, I think everybody that wrote stuff in 1990 deserves the opportunity to go, here's what I was thinking when I wrote it. Just so people know. Whether you agree or not is up to you. Yeah, it's just snotty, very much not serious punk rock songs meant to irritate you so that I guess it's doing its job,
Meant to irritate your parents, more specifically, by the way. That people lose sight of that too.
Well, 20-year-olds certainly act like parents these days. I see a lot of that. A lot of people acting like old heads, and I'm like, how old are you, man?
That's offensive to those of us who are actually lame parents, okay?
I know, right? Like,
when you don't have to be.
Yeah, don't do my job for me. I gotta be the fucking grumpy old man. I don't know. I just, this stuff bothers me, and I get stressed out by it if you can't tell. Like we're just talking about an album, guys. Let me know if you like it or not. This fucking hat got wet and it's not fitting me right now. It's driving me nuts. Yeah. Next week or next couple weeks or whatever, we're going to talk about two very interesting albums for these specific fellas here on your screen. We're going to talk about Green Day Warning, because we know all the real punk rock guys love Green Day. And Rancid 2000.
All the real punk rock guys do legit love that album. So
yeah. And I will have a fair bit of notes on that one, so that'll probably be a longer episode, I'm thinking.
Yeah, I'm thinking about what I got to do that day. I need to clear some schedule to talk about
Yeah,
this
I'm
with you.
thinking like an hour is probably not going to cut it, dude. We're probably going to need an hour and a half. I think the Rancid one will probably lean towards an hour by itself. I don't know that I'll have more than 30 minutes of stuff to talk about with Green Day, but I'll definitely have plenty to say about Rancid because I already know exactly how I'm going to compile my notes for this because I'm going to have notes for this episode. I was a little lazy with my stuff on my preparation on this episode. My apologies to anybody. There was a lot going on. I've been really kind of spread thin, but I did do a little bit of research. I will come more correct next time. I like these albums though. I honestly thought I was going to have more knowledge on it, but I just liked the records and I listened to them again. And was like, yeah, these are good, man. And yeah, I think with the Cruise record, I'll give it like a 8.5. It's really, really good.
I and if I had to compare the two, I would have the Coors one slightly above Naked These with the Light. Even though I probably like Mr. T Experience maybe better as a band.
Oh,
like,
really?
Yeah, but I think this album by the Queers I would take over.
Oh man, before we go, I got something to ask you. Some guy in the comments said that Masked Intruder and Teenage Bottle Rocket had more in common with Blink 182 and Sum 41 than they do Screeching Weasel and the Queers.
Well, no, because it goes to my point like earlier. Whereas like Blink 182 took some of the same influences and did their own thing. Whereas like Teenage Bottle Rocket and Masked Intruders and all those modern Ramonescore bands just kind of copied Screeching Weasel. Like they just did the Screeching Weasel.
I was shocked when he said that. I was like, what are you talking about?
Like, especially like Teenage Bottle Rocket. Like that is.
Dude, especially Masked Intruder. They sound just like
but I think
Queers, but with more doo-wop in it.
Yeah, I don't think of like Screeching Weasel with like Teenage Bottle Rocket. That's exactly who I think of. Like,
both
as an analogy.
Those
like,
two bands are like derivatives of those two bands. Like,
yeah.
Blink 182 and Sum 41, they have almost nothing in common with either of those bands.
That's and yeah.
It was such a weird. I couldn't figure it out.
I can see if you're saying maybe they don't have as much in common with like this, even though like Teenage Bottle Rocket's pretty big in skate punk, with like the skate punk bands that are associated with that label. Maybe you could say that like as fat bands are a little bit different, but like I mean who cares?
I think this dude's probably just a big fan of Screeching Weasel and the Queers and doesn't care so much for Teenage Bottle Rocket and Masked Intruder. So he's trying to say something that was
so Blink equals like, bad.
Shitty. Yeah, which is super dumb, but. I'm gonna go eat dinner and I gotta do my live stream, man. Good talking to you, Rob.
Yeah, do it again.
What's your schedule looking like right now? Still about the same time? Still another week or two, a couple weeks from now?
Yeah, this one was extra long. I had to take extra weeks. Some stuff going on last week, but
it's all good, man. Things happen. Stuff happens from time to time, my friend. Cool, man. Let me know if you need to change schedule. Otherwise, I will see you in 2 weeks. Thank you, everybody, for hanging out with us, man. Yeah, don't hang up quite yet, Rob. We'll see everybody soon. If you have requests, all my Patreon members are going to be looked at first, obviously, but throw stuff in the comments. I'm looking for like just some ideas to spark some interest in my head. Maybe go, oh, I didn't think about that. Because that's the thing. Sometimes I get like kind of bored of my own thoughts. I want to hear somebody else's thoughts. Obviously, Patreon members, if you have a recommendation, I will almost certainly just do it. So if you want to check out Patreon or the web store or anything like that, all of it's linked in the description. Thank you for hanging out with us. I appreciate your time, and I'll see you next time. Peace.